I'm your host, JFD2, and I'm a huge Pokemon fan. I love Pokemon. I've played almost every generation, excluding Generation 4 and 5. I've never been on a Sinnoh adventure or a Unova adventure, but I've played with some of their Pokemon in Heart Gold, Soul Silver, and in X and Y. But I love Pokemon. Love me some good Pokemon. This is going to be my top 10 favorite Pokemon, a start to my journey. Let's get started with number 10, a very simple duck Pokemon. That is the wild duck Pokemon, Farfetch'd. Farfetch'd is a pretty much simple design, a duck holding a leek. Pretty cool. It's based upon this little statement: a duck will carry forth carrying a leek. Not bad. Although Farfetch'd is not competitively useful with its mediocre stats, probably its best thing being attack while holding a leek, or as the game calls it, a stick. Now, the best thing about Farfetch'd is it's a flying type, and it gets a lot of resistances to ground type, and I like that. But I played my Fire and Red playthrough with Farfetch'd as my flying type. I had two options. I either had, Sparrow into Pharaoh, or I had Pidgey into Pidgeot. And I decided, let's go outside the box and use Farfetch'd. The only Farfetch'd you can get in the game, aptly named Chiding. Stuck with that. And got him up to level 70. Helped me out with Lance's dragons. Not that he actually was, super vital, but he got the last hit, so helped me beat Lance's dragons in the Elite Four. But I just love Chiding. He's a very quirky Pokemon, a very, unique. He's one of a kind, the one carrying the leek. He's OG. Don't get mad at me for saying this, but it's opinion, and opinions matter. Don't, kill me for them. But let's continue on with number 9, Haunter, the ghost Pokemon, from Gen 1 as well. Haunter's very specially good. I prefer him over Gengar, because, Gengars are very tough to get, because you have to have friends. Oh my, you gotta have friends! We all need friends. Okay. But besides that, Haunter, I had a very good Haunter. I loved my Haunter. And yes, you can see a theme going on here. I'm going to name my nicknamed Pokemon Haunter, as I called him, ex-Voltorb, due to the old, myth that Voltorbs are, possessed by Haunter. But let's continue on and talk about him. I had a Haunter, lasted up until the Elite Four. I couldn't keep my Haunter around, so I had to get rid of him out of my party. I was so sad to do that. Haunter is one of my favorites from Gen 1. Yes, I did play Gen 1. I grew up in Gen 1. But back to the story. Gen 1, I had a Haunter on my very first team. Haunter was my lead Pokemon most of the game. And I never actually used a Gengar in Gen 1 until I started playing in Gen 6. I actually used my first Gengar that was obtained without hacking, mind you. But Gengar is one of my favorite Pokemon as well, but I'll give him an honorable mention to it. But Haunter, with its, special attack of 115 and a pretty decent speed at 95, it was a pretty cool Pokemon to have around. And every time you hear about its, Pokedex entry that it licks its foe to death and the foe finally shakes, always found that kind of interesting that they showed that in the anime's theme, where, Charmander gets licked by the Haunter, and we can see why now. Charizard's like, I don't want to do anything for Ash. But that's Haunter for you. My Haunter, X-Voltorb. And we have number 8. We're going to Generation 6 now. For my favorite ghost type, Trevenant. I wasn't too fond of, its pre-evolution Phantom until I read its, backstory. It was called, that it's a possessed child that couldn't leave the forest. Second Pokemon to have that kind of, dex entry. Behind Yamask, saying it's a deceased spirit and it cries into its mask, but that's besides the point. I really liked Trevenant. Trevenant is the evolved form of Phantom, pretty much the Forest Keeper. Has a nice attack stat, plus that are pretty unique, and first for its generation. There's 2 Pokemon now with the Ghost and Grass typing, but I think Trevenant does it a lot better than Gourgeist, even though Gourgeist has its own special ability, aka its own special move, Trick or Treat, but I like Phantom Force better because it's more like a fly, where the Pokemon disappears for a turn and then comes back to attack. It's a ghost tree. What can't you love about ghost trees? And I always named it Elder, after Elderwood. And I had a Trevenant, but I never really got to use my Trevenant. That's why it's number 8, because Trevenant came in so late in the game. You go to, your 8th gym battle, you have to find, Wolfrid, and you run into a bunch of Trevenants in the forest, so that's number 8, Trevenant. On to number 7, Crocodile. Crocodile has that look to me like one of those critters from the Mario series. Well, not really the Mario series, but more the Donkey Kong series, but he made an appearance in the Mario series. And he's a pretty cool Pokemon. I always named this one Rallaroo. I know it's K-Rool, but I always thought Rallaroo was the name of the main, Donkey Kong critter boss. But King K-Rool looks like a lot like that. If you take a look real hard at it, really like this dark round type. He was only supposed to be, in my team for a partial part of the time. I was supposed to remove him, but I grew attached to my Croco. And it evolved him from the Croco to the Crocodile. And I really liked him. Really did. He came through for me for a lot of things with his moves of Dig and his move Outrage and his Earthquake and his Foul Play. Just kind of rounded out his moveset. I really liked him. He was really helpful in me beating, Diantha on the first try. I can say that my Croco's been pretty, reliable. It's got a pretty nice heavy, fight in it through its attack stat of 117. It has a nice speed to it. It's not real defensive on it, but that's not a problem for me. I'm more of a straight up attacker, and I love to attack. But, yeah, I really liked my Crocodile, and I stick with it. Rallaroo, my number 7 favorite Pokemon, the ground dark type. And we're on to number 6, my favorite water type. I know water's not one of my favorite types in the game because there's so many water types and so many water types that are so bad, like the Magikarps, the Phoebuses, the Love Discs. But there's one water type that I could say, out of all the starters of the water type, I love this one the most. It's that ninja. It's that Greninja. See what I did there? But on to its stats. Greninja's a very fast Pokemon. It's very special attack oriented. It's got a 530, base stat. As you can see here, I really love that speed. I really love that attack. Its attack's pretty good, but its special attack's pretty good. I always had one with Hydro Cannon, Hydro Pump, Surf, and Cut. Weirdly, I was an H101's, fanboy here. I try to use that and try to get berries and, items, but that's a story for another day. But my Greninja, when I saw Froakie, I always thought Frogger. That's how he got his name. Good old Frogger, the Greninja. Not such a ninja name, but really liked it. I like its shiny form too. I don't have an image for it, but it's black and red instead of blue and red. It makes it look even more like a ninja. Yeah, and honestly, I haven't had the one with the protein ability, but I've heard they're dangerous with the protein ability. I love me some good Pokemon with some good abilities. Alrighty. And on to number 5. We have this weird psychic flying type. I don't have the backstory to what it's based upon, but it looks like it's pretty, Egyptian, if you per se. And it is Sigilyph, the flying psychic type. Or should I say, psychic flying type. Because before Generation 6, there were no dual type flying types. With flying, it's the first type until Noivern and Noibat came around. There were no mono flying types until we had Tornadus. But if you're thinking, okay, there's no normal Pokemon you get on a normal basis that are strictly flying, or their first type is flying. But I liked my Sigilyph, and I named him X-Bit, or more or less Exhibit. He was a pretty cool Pokemon. He's the first Pokemon in my X and Y run that I'm still, playing around with. So I don't want to lose any of my good Pokemon here. But he was my first that I got to level 100. Here's a fun story. Wasn't supposed to be on my team as well. With him and Crocodile, they were supposed to be, there for, one reason. Crocodile was supposed to be there for, getting me a Pangoro. I was going to get rid of him, put him in the box, say sayonara. Sigilyph was supposed to be my HMO2, my fly slave. So, because I wanted to have a Hawlucha on the team, but I couldn't get a hold of a Hawlucha. But once I did get a hold of a Hawlucha, not too far off from when I said I didn't, I found out that Hawlucha wasn't that great. And I couldn't keep my Hawlucha around very long to gain levels, and he was falling behind, so I just said, Hawlucha, you're going to the box. X-Bit, you're going to be my flying type and my fly slave. But I had him, and I use him along with my Charizard with a Megastone Y. I prefer the Y over the X. You'll see later. My Sigilyph, X-Bit, or Exhibit, whichever you want to call him, I liked him. He had to move Solar Beam, Sky Attack. He had Fly and Psychic. Most of his moves were 2-turn moves, but I didn't really mind that because they were pretty strong moves. I mean, it left him open, but most of the time, but that didn't mind me because he was way over leveled for the battle he was going into. It was really helpful for me against Diantha as well. He's my lead Pokemon against Diantha. He's got really good stats all around. I mean, his attack and his, HPs are his lowest stats. That doesn't seem to bother me too much, though, because he's got a nice special attack that helps him with that Psychic and all those other special attacks he uses. They're really nice, though. It's pretty fast, too. Alrighty. On to number 4, which is Breloom. Now, I've never had a Breloom in my XY playthrough, but I had one on my Fire Red team and my Ruby team. And I loved Breloom. Breloom's a heavy hitter. Breloom's a dangerous Pokemon. I had both times with Tactician, and that's a very good thing for Breloom. Although it's got a very bad typing, being grass fighting when it's a mushroom. But that's besides the point. It should be more of a poison fighting type, because mushrooms are fungus, which is sometimes poisonous. But that's besides the point. I always nicknamed my Breloom, laugh if you want, Shroomy, or Shrooms. I had a very favorite one that I favored in my Ruby playthrough, my first Ruby playthrough. I loved my Breloom. Every time I had a chance to catch a Shroomish, God forbid that thing was ugly, but it turned into the beauty that's Breloom. Those stubby little arms. And, well, always had one with Mach Punch and Sky Uppercut, and those were the two moves that I dominated all my opponents with. And I loved my Breloom. I caught me a shiny one. First ever time I caught a shiny in the wild was my Breloom. Besides the Lake of Rage Gyarados, which I never count in, because that's a give-me Pokemon. That's besides the point. I really loved my Shroomy. Helped me beat, Lance once before, because I hacked one into a Fire Red emulator. And I really loved him against Steven. Really helped me beat his, Metagross. Even though, I had to have leftovers on him. On my second try, I beat him with the Mach Punch. Being on its last leg. But a very cool Pokemon. Very, very cool Pokemon. On to number 3. We have a Gen 1er again. And this is Magmar. Yes, that is Magmar. I'm not a true fan of Gen 4 because a lot of those evolutions either took away from my favorites that I grew attached to, or they just made them look straight up ugly. Insert your licky jokes of Bib Boy on full Wi-Fi. But, let's continue on. Its stats are pretty decent, to say. 100 in special attack. It's a pretty much a wreck house Pokemon. In Gen 1, every chance I got to use one, I'd hack one in by trading it in to me. I had several Magmars that I played with. But my major Magmar was Magmar 1. Yes, when I was originally nicknaming Pokemon in my Red and Blue days, my Red, Blue, and Yellow days, okay, I nicknamed them 1, 2, 3, 4. It's kind of stupid at naming Pokemon, but that's besides the point. So I loved Magmar's name too, so I just started naming them Magmar 1 and Magmar 2. I had actually 4 Magmars sitting in my PC through the old cloning jib, and I loved that. Magmar was on my final team. I never actually used him against Blaine. That'd be a stupid move, but I always loved him. When I always got to the Burnt Mansion, I always used to go through that mansion and just wait until I found a Magmar. Once I found a Magmar, I started cloning Magmars. I loved my Magmar. It used to be my number one favorite Pokemon of all time. That said, Magmar is a very neat Pokemon. Unique. You know, I do say it's pretty humanoid with a tail. But it's still a very cool Pokemon. With its nice stats, 100 in special, 95 in attack. Keep it pretty balanced. You know, almost 500. Not a bad Pokemon. Now we're on to number 2. This one's got some nice story to it. But, my number 2 is an OG Pokemon. OG as shit. And I love me some Charizard. On every red playthrough I'd go through, I'd choose Charmander. No matter what. I wasn't a Venusaur fan. I didn't really care for grass types. Really, I only have 2 grass types in my top 10. And really, grass is not really one of my favorite. Because of their alternate typing. But they really fought me in here. But Charizard got 2 Mega Evolutions. Charizard X and Charizard Y in its base form. It's got a nice, 109 special attack, and it's got a little lower on the attack. Its Charizard X kind of, evened out its attack and special attack to 130 without messing with any of its other stats. But on its Y form, this is the one that I really liked using, and I used Y along with my exhibit, whatever you're calling him at this point. I used him to help my exhibit, use his Solar Beam. I'd call in my Charizard, Mega Evolution, use Inferno, which wasn't really a high hitting attack, or I'd use an attack that hit hard, depending on my, feeling at that time. But I'd use his Y form, which had Drought, which, brings on, 5 turns of sunlight, which really helped Solar Beam out. That really helped me beat Seabold. I had trouble beating Seabold. I never wanted to bring my Charizard in, because I always wanted to have my Charizard for my final battle with Diantha, so that I could have Mega versus Mega. Spoiler alerts. She has a Mega Carnivore, if you haven't gotten that far yet. But I really liked its Y form. Very specially strong, especially defensive, especially, offensive at 159 for its, special attack, which is why I wrecked house on Wilkstorm. That, all steel type, even though I hated his, Probopass was sturdy. Sturdy Pokemon piss me off really bad. But, yeah. Charizard Y, I always nicknamed him Hot Pocket after watching, someone else's Let's Play, and he used a Cyndaquil in a Silver run, and he nicknamed that Hot Pocket. I loved him for using that name, and every time I get a fire starter, I always name him Hot Pocket, just as a tribute to that fun little name. And that's my number 2 favorite Pokemon. Now, on to my, honorable mentions. I'd like to give out a couple honorable mentions to some Pokemon that I found pretty interesting, that I liked, but were not good enough, or, not unique enough to make my top 10 list. And I'm not going to have any pictures for them. I had a friend in a Crobat I named Wings. Loved my Wings. Crobat was a pretty cool Pokemon, even though it's, everybody's most hated Pokemon. Yay! The annoyance of Zubat. Walk in a cave, run into a Zubat. I have another honorable mention to go out to Unknown. I used an X on a buddy of mine's, playthrough of the Generation 3 remake. Or not Generation 3 remake, Generation 1 remake. And I took him into the Elite Four, and I was, losing with all the Pokemon he had, because Lance was taking me out. Well, I had Lance down to his final Dragonite. He used up all his full heals. I used up all my full heals. All I had was 2 Pokemon left. I had a Charizard with 2 health, and I had a Unknown X, or some people call him Unknown, because of the surrounding mystery around this Pokemon and its horrible moves. But I had a electric type hidden power, which really helped me stab through Lance's Dragonite, which had a neutral effect on him, so I used him on that, which was 1 hit KO, even though his, Dragonite had 1 health, which helped me win and beat Lance before moving on, which is where I really, really like him, because I never had to really fight Blue again, because I wrecked house with the Charizard that I used Revive on, so I didn't want to revive during battle. I used to have an old Nuzlocke that I used to run called No Revives During Battle. But Unknown was pretty cool, even though it's a pretty useless Pokemon. I just wanted to bring it in just to say, I used Unknown in the Elite Four. Okay, enough about my honorable mentions here. I want to move on and let's talk about something really cool. My number 1 favorite Pokemon. Yes, this Pokemon is not the greatest or, the strongest, but this one's a pretty interesting Pokemon. It's an evolution of a Gen 1 Pokemon. Like, we haven't had a ton of those in the past. Gen 4 was the worst at bringing out, all these, evolutions of Gen 1. They had some good ones, they had some bad ones, it's downright uglies. As I mentioned before, you enter your licky licky jokes here, or your Dengrowth jokes here. Lost our sense of shoe fashion. But my number 1 happens to be a Steelix. I had a Steelix in my Silver run that I traded off a Onix from a Gold that I had. This is the first time I actually ever had a trade that I can actually make that got me this one. My Onix, aptly I named Steelix after I had first laid my eyes on Steelix. I wanted my Onix to be a Steelix, so I named it Steelix. I wasn't the brightest at naming Pokemon back in the day during my Gen 1 and Gen 2 experiences, but they're the games I played the heck out of. Now, Steelix has a Mega Evolution. And Mega Steelix, boy, you better be ready with some hefty fire types. This Pokemon's defensive. It's a wall. It's not a very strong Pokemon in its base form. 85 attack, 95 special. If you can hit it with some special attacks, you're going to wipe this thing clean. But if you're trying to get physical with this thing, don't try to. Go around it. Use its poor special defense and wipe it out. But it's Mega Evolution. Oh my god, is it beautiful. With that, cool look to it. All these shards of steel flying around. 2, what I want to call them, crystals sticking in his back. Very cool looking. They didn't do too much with these Mega Evolutions to change the ideal look like they did with Charizard. Mega Charizard X turned him into a blue dragon, but made sure he looked still the same. That's the craziest they've gone. But I loved this, craziness that they had to go with. Steelix is my favorite. When I got my second Steelix, I named him Iron Snake. Yes, I'm still not as great as naming my Pokemon. I was very young. I was like, 10 years old naming Pokemon. But Steelix was, overall my favorite Pokemon. To tell you, Steelix, was my first level 100 Pokemon I've ever received. I never had. It was the first I ever did. I mean, I've had other level 100 Pokemon, like my, X-Bit, or Exhibit, whatever you're calling it still. Or my, Rowlaroo. They're another couple hundred level 100s. And I'm close on my Charizard, Hot Pocket, and I had a Magmar that after I played Gen 2 I got to level 100 in my red game, because I went back and played some red, relived the glory days of Pokemon when Pokemon was simple. No, baby Pokemon, no breeding, no nothing, just play the game. No competition. But, yeah, that's my top 10 favorite. Leave in the comments your favorite 10. Opinions matters. None of your favorite 10 made this list. I mean, feel free. It's a free country. We speak freely. What the hell? Pokemon is everybody's favorite, with over 700 Pokemon in the franchise and still growing at this point instead of shrinking. I could say shrink Generation 4 out of it and all those crazy evolutions, but we can't get rid of them because they're installed in the games. But Gen 4 is not one of my favorites, but hey, leave in your comments your top 10 favorite. Or maybe you want to hear something different from me. This has been JFT2, a production of We Are the Fallen Music. So subscribe, like. Hey, I'm open to more ideas. If you liked me, subscribe. Don't like me? Don't subscribe. Want to hear more? Subscribe. I'll have more videos up in the future. And you know what? You may hear something you never heard before, or, a different side of things. This has been JFT2, and this has been Pokemaniacs United. Thank you, and gotta catch 'em all.